Okay guys, so welcome to what I guess I would consider a preliminary review of the new 2020 Shimano Zodias rods. So basically this is not going to be a full-on on-the-water performance review. That's going to come later on, but in this video I'm just going to go over all the different changes that I observed in the new rod versus the old rod. Now apparently the first generation Shimano Zodias rods was a big hit and a popular seller for Shimano USA, and I think I can attribute that to the fact that compared to the rods they were selling at the time, the Zodias offered a very radical JDM style that was way different than the conservatively styled rods they were selling, and it also gave American anglers some JDM rod only features like the high power X wrap at a relatively affordable price point of $200 and up. So with being such a popular rod line with Shimano, this new generation Zodias better be at least as good. But let's go over my experience with this first generation Zodias first. Now the 6'6" medium I had was pretty decent, but this 7'2" heavy I feel is underwhelming. As far as sensitivity goes, it feels pretty dead to me for a $200 rod. And I bought this rod to fish bigger bottom contact baits. But all the reviews and reports I've seen on this first generation Zodias is that pretty much everybody who bought them loves them. So once again, the new rods have some pretty big shoes to fill. And with that being said, let's bring the new rod out. And here it is right here. Let you guys take a good look at this thing, and maybe you Zodias owners will be able to spot all the changes to this new rod. Some of them are pretty obvious. Now I bought the 7'2" medium light, which has a lure rating I believe of 3/16 of an ounce up to half an ounce or something like that. So I opted to get the 7'2" medium light because I wanted a longer rod to fish Ned rigs and other smaller soft plastics. So basically what I did was I took notes on all the changes that I saw that Shimano made in this new second generation Zodias versus the first generation rod. And I'm going to go over them with you right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down the list in order of importance, with the least important being first. And with that being said, let us begin. Now the first change is going to be that the guides on the new rod are now going to be black instead of silver. So hopefully you guys can see that. It's probably not going to show up that great in the camera, but the old rod had silver guides, while the new rod has, I guess, a black nickel finish on its guides. Now the second change is also cosmetic, and that's going to be the forenut design. So here's the old one. It's nice, clean design. And here's the new one, and it is a little bit more radical. You can see the, I guess the machining is definitely more aggressive, but also it's got this little, I guess, concave section here in the center, I guess for better grip, while the first generation definitely had a thinner forenut that was tapering as it goes to the front. You can see the new generation forenut is thicker, but it's got this concave section in the center that definitely helps you turn the forenut. So I'm not sure which one I like better, the first generation or the second generation. Now that I look at it, I'm leaning more towards the second generation because I like the fact that it is thicker with this little concave section. But of course this is just my personal preference. Okay, so the next change is going to be to the reel seat. Now, both of these reel seats are still made of CI4+, but you can see that I guess the logo inside, or that little badging. Now on the new model it says Zodias instead of CI4 Plus. And I think I like the new badge better than the old one. Definitely got a more aggressive shape to it, and I like the fact that the Zodias is colored red. Now the shape of the seat is virtually the same, but they've just made a couple of, I guess, sculptural changes here and there. Now the old real seat was more sculpted back here than the new one, but if you look from the top, it appears that these channels on the side are bigger, I guess to be able to drain water more effectively than the old one. And you'll see that instead of just these 3 slashes for water to drain out of, it's got this big cutout now. And then I guess the hood part is noticeably bigger on the new real seat. But the good news is that the shape has definitely remained the same for the most part. And I say that's good because I believe these Shimano real seats are the most comfortable out on the market right now. Now the next thing is going to be the High Power X wrapping. Now these two rods of course are different powers, but hopefully you guys can see. I'm going to try to twist these rods around. It looks like the wrapping, I guess, or the angle of the carbon tape wrapping might be a little bit tighter on the old model. At least that's what I thought when I first saw it. But now that I look at it, I believe the tape itself is thinner on the new model. So the width of the actual carbon tape that's crisscrossing the blank looks to be slightly thinner in width than the old model, making it look like the old model has a tighter High Power X wrap. And that's something that I observed in the X Pride old versus new model as well. So next up is going to be probably the most obvious and biggest visual change for the new model, and that's going to be the inclusion of the carbon monocoque handle butt section, which is something that they've usually only featured in their much more expensive JDM rods like the Poison Adrena, Poison Glorious, and Poison Ultima. As you can see, they didn't just leave it bare. You got Zodias and a bunch of writing here. And you can see there's a color gradation where it's black, and then when you get to this, I guess, soft touch section, you'll see that it fades into red. I guess with this aggressive color change here. But unfortunately, as you can see, there is no fancy end cap there, it just says Shimano. So that's kind of disappointing for a $200 rod. But hopefully you guys can see that the handle itself is longer. Now both of these rods are 7'2", and it's kind of hard to fit them in the screen, but on my new medium light, it looks to be at least an inch longer in length. As you can see when I compare the real seats right there. So if you're the kind of guy that likes to tuck the butt of the handle underneath your arm to set your hook, then the new rods might be better for you. But I will say this, now I'm not sure if the new 7'2" heavy model is going to feature the same longer handle as this medium light, but the handle is definitely longer. Okay, so we have one final change to go over, and in my opinion it is the most important change, even more important than the addition of the monocoque handle. Now a lot of you sharper, more observant viewers may have already noticed this, but in case you haven't, with this new model, Shimano has went with a longer and thicker handle, and in my opinion that is huge. And you can definitely feel it going from one to the other. This is definitely going to help me when it comes to casting and just overall comfort. Now when I first got my first generation Shimano X Pride that had the shorter, I guess more narrowly tapered handle, because it was a JDM model, I immediately noticed how my hand would cramp up trying to grip the reel and the handle while fishing. Now, eventually I did get used to it because a lot more companies were putting really thin tapered handles on their rods, but I am so glad that Shimano went with a longer, thicker handle. Now, it's not really overall much thicker, but you can see the taper on the handle going from front to back is not as drastic as it is with the old rod, and it is definitely longer, and you can definitely tell when I stick them side by side, probably almost an inch longer. So that's definitely more real estate for your hand to rest on when you're casting, and casting ergonomics is important for me. Now, unfortunately, I don't think that Shimano has actually changed the quality of the blank itself. They're probably using the old blanks, but I hope that this 7'2" medium light will be noticeably more sensitive and lively than this 7'2" heavy, because I do know even within rod lines some models will be more sensitive than others. But I hope this helps out any of you guys that have the old rod and you're wondering what has changed about the new rod, so you can make a decision on whether you want to upgrade or not. Alright guys, thanks a lot.